How are you doing? I hope it's great. Welcome. I'm Samuli and this is another video in a series Minimal Code Projects. Say you want to build a web application that has secured parts, meaning they require login, and public parts, they don't require login. And the tech stack for doing such a job might look something like you have OpenID Connect or OIDC, which is an identity authentication protocol that is an extension on top of Open Authorization 2 or OAuth 2. And then you would have Keycloak, which is a free and open source identity and access management system that supports OIDC. Spring Boot, a convention over configuration extension for Spring Java platform. And finally, Vaadin, which is an open source Java framework for building web applications. And my disclosure here is that I am an employee of Vaadin, so you can say that this video is sponsored by Vaadin. But let's say that you haven't done this before and you don't know where to start from. You find examples, tutorials online, but the problem is that they are either a bit overwhelming or incomplete. So if they are incomplete, they are not fully functional applications, so you can't really try them out easily. And if they are overwhelming, then they come with a kitchen sink and you get easily lost what exactly does what. So you might prefer that you would start simple, preferably close to starting from scratch. And you would also like to understand every line that you will commit into your version control. And this minimal code series is exactly for that problem. To take something that is complex and make it into something that is simple and understandable. So let's try to make it simple. I have an example project today for you. It's a standard layout Maven Spring Boot application project. It consists only 3 files in total. The web application that it runs, it has unsecured and secured parts. The secured parts are enforced by SSO login, and also it has a logout. So let's take a look. The first, the Maven pom.xml, it's basically a standard runnable Spring Boot runnable jar application. It has this, well, most interesting part is the Spring Boot starter security, which gives you Spring security. Other dependencies are Vaadin, Spring Boot starter, Spring Boot starter for OAuth 2 client. Also we have to configure, because we're using a Keycloak here, so we have to also configure the Keycloak a bit. And the most important part here is the client ID and issuer URI. And I'll get back to those later, where to configure those with Keycloak. But before we do that, this is the main application class where basically programmatically everything interesting takes place. So here you have 2 Vaadin Flow routes. The first is secured part, meaning that if you access the URL where this route is mapped to, you will be greeted as a login page if you haven't logged in already. Then there is the unsecured part, which you can always access whether or not you have logged in or not. Inside the secured part, you also have a logout link where you can log out from the application. The annotations basically permit all here means that any logged in user, but it has to be a logged in user. And the second one has this anonymous allowed, which means basically anyone, no need to be logged in. Then we have the security configuration. It's implementing this base class called Vaadin Web Security. Vaadin.com documentation page describes the details about that. But also we are doing two interesting things here, and the first is this: we have to implement the logout success handler in order to redirect to our main page. And we are also initializing the OAuth 2 login with defaults. Next, let's take a look at demo. I have already downloaded Keycloak Docker container from the Docker Hub. It's running in port 8081 with default settings that it has. I have not yet configured anything inside it. Also, I have the web application itself running at port 8080 by using Maven Spring Boot run. And first I have to configure the Keycloak so that it would play along with the configuration that we just defined in application properties file just a moment ago. This is the default setting, so logging in as admin. First, I will have to create a realm, and the realm name, that's the one that I defined in property file. I call it minimal Spring Boot OIDC. Now we have a realm. Now we have to create client ID. This is the client ID that matches the one on the property file again. Minimal Spring OIDC client. Choosing the default ones. And then we have to define a couple of the allowed or valid redirect URLs. Also the valid post logout redirect URL. By default it wouldn't be allowing anything. And that's the client. And next we have to create some user that we can log in as. Let's call it as a user. At this point this is running in localhost, so it doesn't really have to be that secure. So user with password user, that does just fine. And that's basically it for the Keycloak side. So next, now that Keycloak is ready for us, next let's jump into the localhost 8080 where the application is running. And there we have the landing page, which is basically say this is the unsecured part, and if you click the secured part you will greet it with the login page where you put the user with the password user, and now you are at the secured part, which basically says the username and has the logout link, and you can click the logout and then it redirects you back to the login page. And in all its simplicity, that's basically it. So that's how you can configure the minimalistic possible Keycloak OIDC secured web application, which allows you to see the logged in user and allows you to log out. And that's all I got for you at this time, and thank you so much for watching. If you're interested of running this demo by yourself, here's the link to GitHub. Please feel free to try it out yourself, and also please do subscribe and leave a comment if you found this kind of content interesting. And I will see you all on the next one. Take care and happy coding.